Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are confronting some serious modern existential dreads surrounding creativity. Let's be honest, we've all been there lately, right? You're staring blankly at a blinking cursor, struggling to write just a single sentence, while an artificial intelligence somewhere is happily generating a full 80,000-word novel in 10 seconds. It naturally makes us ask a pretty terrifying question. Are human creators fundamentally becoming obsolete? I mean, we see algorithms composing music, writing complex code, generating absolutely stunning images, and it really feels like that special human spark is being totally replaced. So let's just dive right into this massive question. When a machine can do all the heavy mechanical lifting of writing and drawing, what is actually left for the human being to do? Are we destined to just sit back and watch the machines have all the fun? Well, to answer this, we're going to look way past all the marketing hype of AI, and we're going to trace a sweeping historical trajectory from ancient scribes to modern intellectual property law, right down to the actual physical silicon chips running these generative models. Section 1. The Solitary Genius Myth. To figure out our place in this wild new era, we first have to completely shatter a deeply ingrained modern myth. We love to picture the author as this lone genius locked in a room, conjuring up brilliant, wholly original ideas entirely out of thin air. But if you look at the historical timeline, we see that this idea of the isolated original genius, it's essentially just an 18th century legal invention. Let's slow down and look at how this builds. Way back in 3000 BCE, ancient Iraqi scribes didn't see themselves as original creators at all. They were deeply collaborative remixers of pre-existing cultural threads. Fast forward to 1710, with the law called the Statute of Anne, and suddenly text was commodified. It literally transformed authorship into a piece of property that could be bought and sold. By 1967, theorist Roland Barthes pushed back on this, arguing texts are really just woven tissues of past quotations. And then, by the 2000s, the collaborative social media landscape of Web 2.0 completely flattened the field, allowing everyday people to remix media on a massive scale. And this brilliantly illustrates the paradigm shift we went through to get to that modern illusion of the solitary author. See, before the 18th century, society viewed artists as classical mirrors. Their job was simply to gracefully reflect and remix the existing world and its traditions. But then the Romantics flipped the script. They turned off the mirror, and they turned on the lamp. Suddenly, creators were burdened with this incredibly heavy expectation of emitting completely original light strictly from their own internal souls, supposedly entirely divorced from any past influence. Section 2. Enter the active public. The digital age aggressively dismantled that 18th century lamp illusion, dragging us completely out of the rigid print era and into something entirely new. For centuries, the printing press locked us into being a quiet, passive reading public. Text was a one-way street from an elite producing class down to an anonymous consuming public. But the internet, it completely leveled that playing field. It transformed us into a massively active public, defined by peer-to-peer traffic. Today, the stark boundary between the reader and the writer has practically vanished. We've evolved from a quiet audience of silent readers into a vibrant, active public of daily creators. Academics actually describe this exact intersection as producage, which is basically a mashup of producing and using. It's a space where nobody is strictly the boss or the consumer anymore. Instead of isolated geniuses making finished, polished products, we see communities engaging in collaborative creation. We're all collaboratively building and remixing temporary, unfinished digital artifacts. It's an environment where the old rigid rules simply fade away, which perfectly sets the stage for the next massive disruption. Section 3. The infinite media surfeit. Now, when you turbocharge that mass participation with the sheer brute force of artificial intelligence, we suddenly find ourselves drowning in an infinite surfeit of generated media. The sheer volume of content is staggering. In this environment, the AI acts as what scholars call a scripter. Now, that's really just a fancy term for a vessel that blindly recombines massive databases of existing text and imagery. But here's the critical distinction we have to make. It completely lacks the capacity for true creation. True creation requires active, engaged living. The AI doesn't feel the paralyzing angst of staring at a blank canvas. It doesn't navigate heartbreak. And it has absolutely zero genuine intuition. It just does the math and mixes data.
Section 4. AI as the digital scripter.
To truly understand our role alongside the scripter, we need to strip away the magic and look at what is physically happening inside the hardware. At its core, the AI is a deterministic tool bound by the physical constraints of copper wires and silicon chips. Think of it like a universal translator that doesn't actually understand what it's saying. Human thought is fluid and continuous, right? But the digital computer experiences a massive modality mismatch. It's forced to chop our fluid human ideas into rigid, mathematical tokens. It blindly maps a sequence of text to a sequence of code or pixels without actually comprehending a single word of it. It is an incredibly powerful enabler, for sure, but purely a mechanical translator. So, how do we impart meaning to this blind machine? Well, think of it as steering a ship across a bridge with 3 steps. This is the semiotic bridge. Step 1 is OS alpha, our fuzzy, associative, imaginative human intent. You are the captain here. Step 2 is funneling that intent through the steering wheel, the rigid text of a prompt or your code. And step 3 is the unyielding physical execution of the hardware. The text of your prompt is the medium that lets us map our nonlinear thoughts directly onto physical silicon. You are the sole source of the intent. The machine is merely the execution layer. But because the machine is really just statistically guessing, it introduces unpredictable algorithmic distortion. It strays from your exact vision. Therefore, true authorship in this era requires intense human protortion. This is the real mental sweat you pour into a prompt when the AI gives you something that's just slightly off base. It's the active, ongoing effort required to steer the AI, to intervene, and to forcefully bend the scripter back toward your exact mandate. You can't just be a passive monitor, you have to actively pilot the ship. Section 5. Rise of the Curator. And this brings us to the ultimate climax of our explainer, redefining exactly what it means to be an artist in an era where the machine handles the mechanical rendering. The overarching strategy remains firmly human. We've simply evolved. We have moved away from the solitary epiphany of originating raw content out of thin air. Instead, society has shifted from silent readers to a massively active public of orchestrators. We've shifted to the strategic management and curation of the final output. The machine performs the technical technique, the tedious rendering of the pixels or the syntax of the code. But you, the human, provide the vital rhetorical strategy and the moral intent. Legal scholar Amy Adler puts it absolutely perfectly with this quote. In a world totally bombarded by generated media, an absolute infinite surfeit of content, the most vital artist functions just like a curator, an editor, or a selector. When algorithms can generate literally anything, the magic lies in sorting through that abyss to find the exact piece that matters. The true art is in the selection, the context, and the curation. So, we are witnessing the death of the solitary originator and the glorious rebirth of the human orchestrator. You are no longer just a creator staring at a blank page. You are the sovereign pilot. You manage the technical processes. You curate the profound meaning out of all that noise, and you actively wield the script to command the machine. The AI might be the brush, but you are absolutely still the painter. Think about this the next time you sit down to create, whether it's drafting code, writing a presentation, or generating a digital image. Will you let yourself be a passive crumple zone for an algorithm, blindly accepting its distortion? Or will you fiercely command that semiotic bridge, apply the sweat of your brow, and step up as the sovereign curator of your own digital legacy? The choice and the true magic of authorship is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep orchestrating.